Accessibility ain't just for those with disabilities. Makes the world better for everyone, online as well as in person. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am the blind blogger Maxwell Ivy, and this is another episode of the Accessibility Advantage, which you can find at theaccessibilityadvantage.com or on your favorite podcast players. And so I am the goal of my podcast is to advocate for more inclusion of and accessibility for people with disabilities by emphasizing the many positive benefits of inclusion, more so than depending so much on the negative aspects of regulation, legal challenges, and negative publicity. So I'm really looking forward to today's conversation because we're going to be talking about art and fun and communication and family and who knows what else. And it's really just about how people with disabilities want the same things everybody else does. We just need a little more help in order to accomplish those things. So I'm going to be speaking to Daniel Lubiner and his team from BrailleDoodle. And you can find them at the Touchpad Foundation.com, I think.
It's .org. Actually, a quick way is like to drop it down. Now we have BrailleDoodle.org.
And you have BrailleDoodle.org. Cool.
BrailleDoodle.org.
Yeah. So we'll make sure they get those links. And Daniel is a 25-year veteran of teaching people with disabilities, and especially a great experience teaching art to the visually impaired people with disabilities. He's a longtime advocate for people who are blind or visually impaired, or those with disabilities in general. And you've already heard me mess up his website. So Daniel, thank you for coming on the podcast, and welcome to everybody here. I'm looking forward to a fun, if maybe not so organized or planned out conversation. So could we start? I know that one of your team may not be able to stay around for long. But I'd really love to hear the beginning of your story as far as how you got into teaching and some of the things you learned from teaching people with disabilities about art.
Yeah, sure. So I was actually always into the arts. I originally wanted to be an actor.
Cool.
So, studied Shakespeare and all that. But then after some years of working as a waiter, I decided to be a teacher. So my parents were teachers, so I went back to school, and I always had trouble in school, so I thought special education would be a good way to go. So I was a teacher, like you said, for over 25 years. And the last years I was teaching the blind and low vision in the Bronx over here in New York. And those kids inspired me so much. I just love that job. And, creating things with wood and creating things with wire and all these other things. I tell you what I loved about that job is the way all the students, they showed me how blindness didn't define them. They weren't defined by, they were just kids. They were kids or teenagers or, young adults. They wanted to play and make out in the hallways or go to prom, So it just, it was just very enlightening. Then, in 2020, the pandemic hit, and overnight all the students went home. So they couldn't do art. They couldn't do, anything tactile. I was singing songs, doing poetry with them. And I was thinking, how are they learning Braille now? And the answer was not too well, without the tactile tools at home, they couldn't learn, Braille in a good way. I mean, they could. I mean, Matthew could tell you he did some remote Braille, which was amazing during the pandemic. But without being able to draw or explore, and then I found out that it's not just like a pandemic problem. All around the world, this is a problem, like it's kind of like a horrific problem because, we hear about these like statistics like 70-80% of blind people are unemployed or, but the fact is most kids are not learning to read and write. So if we're not teaching kids how to read and write, then they can't stand a chance in, getting a proper education and getting the jobs that they want to get.
No, and it actually goes much farther than that. A couple of years ago, I was doing a review of the Braille Legos, and I hope I'm not going. I hope I don't get on the wrong foot by mentioning a different tactile product. But
no, that's what I like. Braille Legos, they're fun.
Okay, the one thing I learned during my research is that when we teach kids Braille, however we go about teaching it, we are not just teaching them Braille. We're teaching them how to communicate with their fellow people of the same age. And when the students don't learn to communicate, don't learn to read and write in some format at a very early age, it puts them at a big disadvantage that only gets worse as they go throughout the education and work process.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, Matthew, maybe you could tell a little bit about how you came on and you could talk about this.
This is Matthew Bullis in Phoenix, Arizona. I've been totally blind my whole life, and I'm a teacher of blind and visually impaired adults here in Phoenix. And this product we're talking about is called the BrailleDoodle. So you got one side that is for tactile drawing. You can draw and instantly feel what you've got in front of you. You don't have to turn it backwards or anything like that. It's real time with magnetic stylus with ball bearings. And the other side will teach you letter by letter how to teach yourself Braille or to practice with someone else. And so if this product had been around years ago, then everyone could have had one during the pandemic and could have practiced their Braille along with him. And I also could have used this years ago in college when I had to haul around a huge graphing board. So the drawing side will show you how to, it has graph lines, it has the plotting points, you can count the dots. So that's a brief description of what the product actually is, totally mechanical. And so that's why in developing countries, they really love it because there's no tech, it's low tech, what you would call.
Right. It's low tech, it's lightweight, it has multiple purposes. But here again, this thing y'all designed, it's more than just somebody being able to do the graph work. What you're doing, or what can be accomplished with this, is opening up fields of study that would be closed to a lot of people with vision loss who didn't have access to the BrailleDoodle. I'm going to share my personal experience. I was really good at math in junior high school and high school. But as I got farther along in math, where you have to start doing things in a graphic basis where you have the X and Y and Z, and you've got to build those charts, or you've got to do plotting. I just couldn't do it. There wasn't an option in 1983, 84, 85. And I basically gave up on fields of study because the technology just wouldn't allow me to complete them, or at least as I saw it, they wouldn't.
Right. And an example from that Daniel uses sometimes is that when you're doing graphs or when you're drawing pictures, if you get that embossed, or if you spend the time on your Perkins Brailler to emboss a graphic and you either do it wrong or you need to update it, you got to throw the page away and do it again. But
Yes.
not with a BrailleDoodle. You just adjust your drawing. Daniel has an example about houses and trees. Maybe you could speak about that one. There's templates.
Yeah. Well, just to stick on the graphs for a minute, one thing that's really cool. Well, I should, let me finish out that story. Yeah, I was like in the middle of the story. So, yeah, so the pandemic happened. I'll make it really brief for once.
I'm going to help you out. We don't really do brief on my podcast, so feel free.
Yeah, so I had this little toy that was like from Amazon, and it's kind of like what I'm holding up now. It had all these balls in it, like all these holes, and you could drag this magnetic thing, but it wasn't good for my students because the little BBs would not stay up if you touched them, and also you could get any accuracy. So I was thinking, like, what if we could get something that would be perfect for blind and low vision that could teach them Braille and also allow them to be creative and do like STEM activities on it. And that's when I started like drawing and experimenting and stuff. So what I'm holding up right now, I'm holding up the BrailleDoodle. So for those of you who can't see, it's about the size of a laptop. It's about 1 inch thick. It's blue all over. On one side is 1,333 holes. So it's a lot of holes. And when I drag the magnetic stylus over it, there's little silver balls that pop up. So you can see and feel the silver balls, and you can kind of hear them pop up as well. And on the other side, Matthew did that quick thing, but on the other side is that, the alphabet, where you can do the A and AB, and it has one cell that shows you what it is, and then the other cell, you practice it. So one cell shows you could count like all the dots, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But this shows you, and then you copy it. It shows you, and then you copy it.
Yeah, which is exactly how I taught myself to code HTML back in the day when that was the only way I could get online. When you have something where you can look at the way they've done it, and then you can do it for yourself, and then compare your work to their work to make sure you're getting the format correct. Mm-hmm. That's really all you need, isn't it?
Yep. And, as I was, studying to be a teacher and teaching over the years, I mean, you find out like what works and what doesn't work. And, and the other thing that's on the BrailleDoodle on the bottom is 2 lines of 19 Braille cells. So you could do words and sentences, because that's important too. And there's also examples of standard size Braille all over the place. So these are like, it goes from jumbo Braille down to smaller Braille, down to like standard size Braille. And, I just, I also want to introduce Dawn, who's on the call. She's a chief operating officer, and she has been terrific. They've both been terrific. I mean, Matthew came on years ago, and he's been great at like explaining, to people who are blind and low vision, how to navigate websites, how to, make sure that they understand what the BrailleDoodle does. And he's taught me a whole mess of things. And Dawn, I mean, you want to tell a little bit about yourself?
Yes, so Dawn,
sure.
welcome to the Accessibility Advantage, and please don't feel shy. We're a very, very friendly bunch here, and if anybody isn't friendly, we just ignore them.
Oh, nice. Well, thank you so much for having me. Yes, as Daniel mentioned, my name is Dawn Campbell, and I'm Chief Operating Officer here with the Foundation. I actually discovered Daniel and the Foundation about 1.5 years ago when I was in Toronto at a CNIB conference for the blind. And I saw this device on the table, and I thought, what is this? I have been in the field of accessibility for over 30 years. I have worked in education. I have educated about built environment and mindsets and assumptions. And for 10 years, I worked in digital accessibility and the importance of helping companies make their documents accessible. I am a person with a physical disability. I've had a hip replacement and an ankle replacement, and yet I had never seen anything like this BrailleDoodle before. So that's how I got involved, because I felt like there was something to this, the simplicity of this device that doesn't take batteries, that doesn't require updating, that doesn't need the internet, in a way that I just had never seen before. So that was my first involvement with BrailleDoodle. Happy to be here.
Well, and one thing I want to make sure people heard is you talked about how you have a physical disability because you have a hip and an ankle, but you're an example of how just about anybody can become disabled in our world. And
right.
Products like this that you may never have heard about may become important.
That's right. Absolutely. Just by accident or injury, right? We are all at risk of joining the minority of having a disability at any point in our lives. All of us are growing and aging. I don't know about anyone else on this call, but I know that after I turned 40, suddenly I didn't just require reading glasses. I also needed distance ones. So, right. So things change. And yeah, a device like this that also for me was when I started getting involved in hearing the stories of young children using this, and then going to conferences, talking to blind veterans who were coming back from, serving the country and had lost their vision or knew they were losing their vision. And the fear that came out of talking with them about learning Braille was so fascinating. And I'd show them the BrailleDoodle and just say, just trust me, come over, put your hands on this. And suddenly it became, wait a minute, they weren't even thinking about themselves using it for learning Braille. They were looking at they were feeling the other side, going, what if I give this to my 3-year-old granddaughter so she could draw me pictures and we could play? So again, for me, this is a tool that is just so good for all ages and all abilities.
Right. And the fear of losing vision is one of the top fears. They say mainly because so many people just don't understand how somebody with vision loss continues to live a full life. They don't know how they would do that. So, but I hadn't even thought about veterans. I thought about people aging. I thought about injury. I thought about genetic disabilities with vision loss. But you're right. We have a huge community of veterans out there who aren't being served generally. And there isn't really a mechanism for them to learn Braille on any type of scale. So this is a very important device to that community.
Absolutely.
Yeah, one thing I wanted Matthew to talk on is like how some people say, okay, we have these new devices, we have all these AI and computers, so really adults don't need to learn Braille anymore, or some of them can't even learn Braille. Like a lot of adults say, I can't learn Braille. So Matthew, you've come across that, right?
Oh yes, it's still even today, people think that Braille is dying out or that you don't need Braille, and it's just a myth. But unfortunately, it was perpetuated by the teachers of the visually impaired who were swamped, and they still are, because they get to where they have 60 clients and then maybe a couple need Braille, or they could use Braille, and so it's just a thing where, with electronic Braille displays, you can have an entire library at your fingertips, or you could Bluetooth to your phone. But with devices like the BrailleDoodle, it gives you an entry point into the world of Braille without any thousands of dollars expense to and then you get a device which sits on your shelf and you don't use it because you didn't succeed the first time, and you say, well, that's not for me. But you do succeed the first and the second time and the third time that you use the BrailleDoodle, because where we have instructions and we got videos, and it's just an intuitive product and fun. I mean, we've heard also from the autism community about the drawing side, the doodle side, where it's just fun to hear the ball bearings come up and hear the clicking and to drag the stylus across, even if you're just making shapeless forms. But Braille is more relevant than ever.
Right. Well, if we're going to talk shapeless forms, there's some very expensive art in the Louvre and other places that shapeless forms. And you were mentioning a very important point. This is low tech. It's very low cost. If you start talking about Braille displays, you're talking several $1,000s and up. I recently did some research into the Monarch, which is a new 3-dimensional tablet, and found out that it's somewhere around $20,000 now.
Right,
and if I had $20,000, I'd have to be looking for a used car because our truck's getting old. You know what I mean?
Yeah. A lot of these devices are geared toward and bought by the education system, not by individuals. But the BrailleDoodle, Daniel wanted to have a product that individuals could buy, and that it would be an affordable product. I mean, you could take this in the car with you and practice and draw, and as we've said, play with your kids or grandkids.
Right.
Max, if you had $20,000, you could easily get like 115 doodles with that money.
You've given out to lots of people in your town.
Yeah. But he mentioned two other things I want us to get to. One is the learning curve, because there is a steep learning curve with the higher technology options for learning Braille or for using Braille as a way of interacting with the internet. And if people are, and you combine that with the fact that as we get older, it's harder for us to adapt and learn to use new technology. I imagine that this is really a much better option for more people than the ones doing the purchasing would realize.
Right, because you start with the alphabet and you have a couple of contractions there, and if it takes you, because I've talked with customers who are out in the middle of nowhere and they don't have a Braille instructor within 30 miles, and maybe the instructor could come out to them once or maybe twice, a year maybe, but they're out in the middle of nowhere, and so I phoned this customer and oriented the BrailleDoodle so she knew as a totally blind person how to set it up and how to get it to where you understand how to move through the device across and then downwards, and then just to have a correct orientation to know how to use this. But even if this customer was the only person that she interacted only with herself teaching Braille, and it took her 6 months or so to learn the alphabet, and then she learned it, but then could be able to get some other device at a later time to work with the Braille. But then, of course, Daniel mentioned you have some cells at the bottom to write, and there's also templates that come with the BrailleDoodle that you can slide into the drawing side, so that if 2 cells of 19 letters on the Braille side is not enough for you, then you can load in this block of cells on the drawing side. Now maybe Daniel has it there to show you.
Yeah.
You get one that loads it into, you can get it into Braille cells, but then there's another one that loads it into the top 4 dots of the Braille cell. That's for math equations if you're only doing numbers. And then he might be able to show you the stencil that we have, which is a third example of houses and trees.
This is really cool. You started with a very simple concept that you borrowed from a toy you got online, and now you're basically, this would be like expansion packs for a video game or something. Is that a correct interpretation?
Yeah, well, we're hoping to come out with more stencils in the future. But with these 3 stencils, Matthew, you're doing a great job going through this, I tell you.
Yeah. You know, I wish I'd have had one of these when I took the LSAT, because I took it twice and never did post a score I'm willing to publish online. You know, I mean,
Well, you know, Max, the other one of the other stories that I recently heard was how, you know, I have a friend who has a teenage son who's been blind since birth, and he's always wanted his mother to learn Braille and enjoy Braille because he's the only one in his family that knows Braille, despite him being the only one who's blind. And so he started to use the BrailleDoodle to leave her messages, and if she wants to read, you know, Happy Mother's Day, I love you, she's got to learn how to decode in Braille. So
I love it. I love it. Now what we need is we need a spy movie or a heist movie where they use the BrailleDoodle. Let's work on that.
We'll have to see if we can, because I know that the 1993 movie Sneakers had a spy that had used a Braille display. So that was interesting to have that. A bunch of hackers in that movie. But the thing about setting with working with kids and sending messages to each other. Speaking of also cultures that are out there in this part of Arizona, if I go up a little higher in Arizona, I will reach the reservation and many tribes up there. And retinitis pigmentosa and other vision conditions are hereditary and genetic in that population. So there are entire families up on the reservations who have vision conditions like this.
You know, I wasn't even thinking about that. That's a great point, because these communities they tend to be socially isolated, either out of tradition or because of the communities that live near them, or for geography, and so they would have a higher number of people with any particular thing, especially with vision loss.
Right, and so when I would go up to help them on the reservation, it would be a 6-hour drive up there.
Wow.
And it would be 6 hour. It would take me off the schedule for the last half of the week. And so getting up there, I mean, we love to do it when we can, but it does take a extra effort to reach these folks, and also the deaf-blind community as well. I'm not sure how many people we've heard from in that community, but definitely a communication tool in that way as well.
Oh yeah, they love it. Helen Keller Institute, we've got fantastic feedback. Well, one thing that's awesome, and kind of like what you were talking about, Matthew, is I traveled out to India just recently. I actually this was my second trip out there. I just love the country, the culture out there, but they have such a need for something like this as well. Because over there, it's like less than 1% of kids are learning Braille. And, because it's such a big population, and they have like 20% of the total blind population in the world is in India. Something crazy like that. But it was just a great experience out there. So now what's great is we're spreading out and we're going all over the world. So now we have some BrailleDoodles in Kenya. We have some BrailleDoodles in India. We have BrailleDoodles in Australia, UK, New Zealand.
Can I ask a question? And I think I may know the answer, but I want to ask it because I'm not sure that other people know about this. Most people are not aware that that Braille is different depending on what language you're using Braille in. So have y'all started developing like Braille alphabets or templates for, say, Portuguese Braille or Spanish Braille or other language versions of Braille?
So
yes,
Max,
go ahead.
Max, it's Dawn. You just hit the nail on the head. That has been our number one request for localization. We have distributors now in 14 countries, and our distributors, obviously being in 14 countries, come from different languages. Now, for us, luckily, majority of the world does know the importance of speaking, value speaking English. But yes, so when Daniel was showing and Matthew were mentioning the stencils or the overlays that slide over top of the blank side of the doodle. That is our next focus for 2026, is we really want to come up with Braille in different languages. In a similar, you learn the Braille, you learn the dot, you practice the dot, you learn the dot, you practice. In that similar style, that will be a stencil in different languages.
Yeah, I've already designed the stencil, what it would look like. You know, we need to get somebody who's going to do some of the engineering and, you know,
find a donor.
Yeah,
Okay.
we need a donor.
There's our other
you know,
mission.
On
Well-
cue as the host, it's BrailleDoodle.org, y'all. And please visit the website and consider sharing the link and telling your friends and family and followers about this amazing product and the team that's behind it, and encourage them to support them financially, or to share the link with anybody you know who may want to support them financially. Let's definitely get the word out there of about BrailleDoodle and BrailleDoodle.org. You know, some days my new teeth just don't want to cooperate. But, and I have one last question on templates, and then I'd like for us to just talk about why people should care about people learning Braille, and how inclusion benefits everybody else. And I don't think we'll disagree on that, but I just want to focus on that for the last part of our conversation. But with templates, is anybody doing a Braille music template?
That's another thing we really want to do. This really opens up to all these different things. And the coolest thing about Braille is it's all 6 dots. So, you know, sometimes it's two sets of 6 dots, but Chinese, Japanese.
I'll give you an example.
Yeah, go ahead.
Probably the best example I've heard is Arabic Braille. Now, for standardization and for Braille displays, they've decided that even though print readers read right to left, Arabic Braille is read left to right because of Braille displays. And so if we were to make a template for Arabic alphabet has 28 letters. And so that means that apart from the regular letters, they would just use some of the things that we would call contractions for their letters. So however you would read in Arabic Braille, there could be a template that could guide you through there. And Braille music would be another one where you could have a template that would show you, here is the notes, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then the next line could show you, here is C sharp, here is the octave sign. It could be more than that. It may be a lot of templates, but it's definitely something that can be investigated. And of course, someone with a Cricut machine, which is the vinyl cutting and plastic cutting machine that craft people and consumers tend to use, someone could also cut their own template if they wanted to, a drawing. So.
Yeah, is that something that y'all are going to consider, the option of people being able to download and cut their own templates?
Well, as long as they have the measurements, someone could cut a piece of vinyl to size, and then they could use that, and they could draw their own. But as far as an official support, we'll have to look at that.
Yeah, that's probably a little beyond what you guys are in the market for right now as far as a task is concerned. But that's just the way my mind goes. I see one thing and then I got to ask about the next 4 or 5 things. So sorry about that, y'all.
But Max, you make a great point, because that's what, we do hope that in the, as the organization matures and as more Braille Doodles get out there, we are thinking about an open source type community, not just where people share stencils, but where people just share ideas about lesson plans and teaching, ways that you can go about using the doodle and teaching, because more and more come out every day. I had someone in her 60s tell me she was going to make knitting patterns on the back by knit and pearl, balls up, balls down kind of thing. How fascinating.
Yeah, when I heard about the ball bearings the first time, it reminded me of back when I still had more vision and I would do beadwork. And so it's kind of like the patterns you would do with beadwork, except, you've got Braille or you've got art type designs. So, but I really, like I say, the one of the themes of this podcast is to help people better understand why this matters to them, why this matters to the economy or the society. So I'm just wondering if y'all would share some thoughts on how improving Braille language among people of all ages benefits the rest of us.
Well,
Bill, it's a deep question.
I'm sorry.
No. It's not. I was wondering if Matthew was going to start, but I'll begin.
Okay.
Well, one thing that that shocks me is like when I go to like I went in India. I was at this university, and we were showing off the BrailleDoodle, and the head of the university, like one of the top guys, like you couldn't even get an appointment with this guy. Somebody got me in and said, oh, you got to see this BrailleDoodle, so they got me an appointment. I go into his office, everybody's like, very respectful for, and I go in there and he's like, isn't Braille like sort of out now? We don't really need it that much. We have all of the tech and everything now. And I'm just like, yes, we do need Braille. It
would be like if I told you you didn't need to read print, someone could read it to you. You don't need to
Right.
learn how to read. Someone will read it to you.
And how important it is when students are young and growing up for them to get that sort of back and forth of the brain and all the things that come together when you're actually reading something and not just listening to something. And I had the experience right in front of me because I had students who were seniors in high school, and I tell you, these guys couldn't write an email. They didn't know the grammar, they didn't know capitalization, because they stopped teaching them Braille at 12 years old. And sometimes that's what they do too. Like you'll teach Braille, for grades 1 through 4, and then we'll stop. But it is so important. Like we were talking about before, like with adults who are losing their vision, the fear that they might have just to, you have to read all that. But, when I'm have a table out and I'm showing off the BrailleDoodle, like somebody comes up and I say, hey, have you seen the BrailleDoodle? They're like, oh, Braille. I can't do Braille. I don't have the finger thing. I don't, and I'm like, wait a minute, come up and check it out. Like Dawn was saying, just feel this thing. And maybe you just learn A, B, and C. Maybe we just check that out. And then maybe we build on that and you go up to J. And we know our numbers.
Yeah.
And, one example that I've been going through is like, and I was actually sitting at dinner with somebody who had the Ray-Bans, right? So I said, okay, let's pretend you're on the elevator and your internet's not working. Okay, can you use your Ray-Bans to find what floor you're on? No, you can't. Because without internet, you don't have that. I mean, there's just other use cases, but that was just one that I think comes up. But just to find the men's room and the women's room, and I think Dawn was saying before. But
well, yeah, it's definitely very important. I mean, I use it every day. I wouldn't be without it to label things. And sure, it takes time to label things and get things. And Braille, physical Braille is more bulky, but that's, I wouldn't be without it. Want to thank you for your time today. I have to go teach a student, so I'm going to leave the call.
Well, I want to thank you for your time, but I also want to thank you for your dedication as a teacher, because the amount of time you've spent, including the example of the teaching on the reservations. That's not something people do because they're worried about whether or not they're going to get a check at the end of the week. That's something they do because they have a sincere passion. So I want to thank you for that.
Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you, Matthew.
Yeah,
it's just been wonderful to have Matthew on board. He's been with me for like 4 years. He like called me up when I was just starting out with this Kickstarter thing, and he was like, "So tell me about this thing." And he's just been a real asset to have, like just putting together the directions. Like if you go on our website and it says BrailleDoodle.org, you could go to directions and there's videos set up. Well, Matthew helped me like set up these videos so anybody, we're picturing like a blind man over in Utah in the middle of nowhere, taking this thing out and being able to orient it and just start enjoying it, by himself, just with the videos to guide him along.
Yeah. And, one thing we know about even post-COVID is there's still a lot of isolation within the vision loss community. There's a lot of places in this country where the transportation doesn't exist, or if it does exist, it's very, very limited. I recently had a friend reach out to me because his vision loss had progressed fairly rapidly, and he lives in a suburb of Chicago. And he's like, "Max, what am I going to do now?" So I do feel like the ability, or at least the option to teach yourself Braille in a very simple, straightforward format that can get you there pretty quickly, from what I'm hearing, is a great thing. But
Max, it's Dawn.
Yeah, Dawn.
Well, we're doing shout outs. There is another part of the foundation that I'd love to shout out to, and that is our superior board of directors and board of advisors that we have. So, the one thing that I have to tell you really attracted me to the foundation was that here was this executive director who, instead of going and creating a for-profit company, has created a not-for-profit company. So we can work with other for-profits and other not-for-profits in really creative ways, right? And part of the success of BrailleDoodle too has been our really exceptional board of directors, and we've had some really prominent individuals like Neva Fairchild, who's in Texas, and Judy Dixon, who's in Washington, and we get advice from Dr. Kirk Adams, and we just and so many others that might not be recognizable by the public by me just saying their names, but have just had years of both personal and, professional experience that just have been wonderful assets to helping us create awareness around the globe for not just the Braille side, but for the Doodle side. And the Doodle side, there was one thing that I thought I had that as you guys were talking, the one thing we haven't talked about too is how much mapping and O&M teachers are loving the Doodle side. So maybe Daniel can speak to that a bit.
Right, and that's orientation and mobility for those of y'all who are not familiar with O&M.
Right. So when a person's either going blind or they're trying to learn blind skills, they might have an orientation and mobility teacher who will teach them how to navigate with a cane, or maybe you're learning skills with a dog, and this could help you because we could map something out on the fly. So if I say, like, I'm over here, okay, and then I'm coming down, so I'm sketching on my BrailleDoodle. I'm going down, towards the bottom, then I'm making a left, then I'm going down again, then I'm making a right, and that's where we could have our destination. So we could actually make these little maps on the go, and we could even use the dots to represent like paces and things like that. And also sometimes you get to like strange intersections or circles that might, throw somebody off, or there's like construction or something. You could always throw up something on here where you'd be able to use it. So the use cases just go on and on.
Yeah, I was actually thinking of a similar use for it. Again, it's one of those things where the high tech is being used and being pushed. Is like if you are attending a conference, and many conferences either don't have the facilities or they don't make the effort to give you Braille maps that you can use to navigate their venue. This is something that if you had the print layout of the location you were going to, you or a sighted person could help you create your own map that you could use to orient yourself before you get there or while you're there.
Wouldn't it be great if the information desk just had one already sitting there? So when you went up to the information, the registration table just said, oh, by the way, feel our tactile map so you can navigate how many aisles and rows there are.
Oh, where's the bathroom? Let me show you. So you go down here, you make a left.
Putting the work on yourself, Max. No.
Yeah.
Yes, I appreciate you reminding me. We want other people to do the work, and we want other people to spend the money. Thanks for the reminder.
No, that is just the right to access, right? And that is what our accessibility laws throughout Canada and the United States are attempting to achieve, is to make conferences like that barrier free. And this is a really easy win for an organizer of a conference, I think.
And the Monarch, I mean, it's an incredible machine, and the possibilities are going to be wonderful in the future. However it becomes more available, because as things go on, things do get cheaper, just like TVs that used to be, $2,000 are now $180. But this could also introduce people to tactile graphics. So it's like you have that introduction to what is tactile graphics. Because if you're just going on to that thing for the first time, it's like it could be just feeling like a bunch of scribbly lines until you really have some experience orienting yourself. And the BrailleDoodle allows the student to do them themselves. And that's I always push that, so important. Like the student is doing it, not the teacher. We're not handing the student a piece of paper that says, here, check this out. This is a graph. The student is making the XY graph. The student is making the angles,
Yes.
Totally different thing, totally different level of learning.
I totally agree with you. When I was in elementary school, before I started losing my vision, they had, instead of telling our parents to buy us flashcards for the multiplication tables, they had us all make our own flashcards for the multiplication tables. And we all learned those multiplication tables much faster than I believe a lot of kids do now, if they learn them at all. I mean?
Yeah, I'm sure it's all about doing
investment.
That's why this is designed so the student is responsible for their own doing, because it's so much a better way to get that intrinsic learning, get it into your brain.
Yeah. So we're talking about a device here that gives people an outlet for art and other creative things, like you've mentioned, the woman with knitting, and parents and children either creating pictures together or for each other. Has applications for veterans who have lost vision due to injury. A great application for people who are getting older when they're losing their vision, even if they don't consider themselves to be disabled, and need something that's more low tech like this. But the thing is we're not just talking about reading Braille. We're talking about communicating with people on an equal level on equal ability. And that means that people with vision loss can participate more in their communities. And anytime you can, I mean, one of the things that really aggravates me is when you have people who have knowledge, experience, or who have a voice, such as a writer, a singer-songwriter, etc. The world can't afford to not have us participate. They may think it's okay for there to be 75% unemployment among physically disabled. They may think that's totally okay. The government or families will take, but the truth is that's a huge loss of talent, because there are a lot of us that have great skills, talents, abilities. We just need a way to contribute. And this is a great starting point, if I'm understanding things correctly.
No, absolutely. And thank you for putting it like that. And thank you for having us on. This has been a wonderful discussion. And the one thing I do want to point out too is, like, it's also been a really rough road. There's a lot of ups and downs to getting something like this out there. And the amount of money that goes into it is just astronomical. And we've had a lot of very, very generous people who've come along, fantastic people who have come along to help out. But I do want to give a shout out that if anybody is out there and feels that this is an important thing, if they feel like they want to buy Braille doodles for their community, like there are 400 people, 400 children in the Bronx. I was just doing a little research that could use one of these. Why can't we get these 400 kids one of these so they could take it home? That's my dream eventually too for the Touchpad Pro Foundation, is to be able to give these out. We get to a point where the selling and the money comes in and out, but we're getting to a point where we could give them out. But we could certainly use anybody who feels as though they want to give to something like this. So that's BrailleDoodle.org, and you could just reach right out to us. Info, the emails there and everything.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to approach it, to have people think about providing these to a community, say to a school district, or to a city of multiple school districts, or to blind students in a particular location like the Bronx. Or so I think you've got a great, and who knows, maybe we can eventually get to the point where we have people competing to provide these to groups, either based on schools, colleges, or regional. So we'll see what happens. I'm definitely hoping that we get some people in that'll want to help support your mission and put these in the hands of more people.
Yeah, I'm like, come on, Stevie Wonder. You could buy a few of these for Los Angeles.
I think he's a high-tech cat, if you want to know the truth about it. But who knows? Hey, Stevie, if you're listening, we need you to hook up. We need you to help with the Braille Doodles.
Yeah.
And we need to get you on my podcast too. So.
Oh yeah, definitely.
We
definitely
can do both. We can do both. Stevie. Yeah. We can do both. And of course, if you're in another country, please don't forget that these things are helping students all around the world. So if you live in another country and you want to support a community, or even you want to support some students that you know personally, definitely go to BrailleDoodle.org and reach out. And I look forward to seeing some good results from y'all from this conversation. I've really enjoyed speaking with y'all. Again, it's BrailleDoodle.org. And I've been speaking with Daniel and Matthew and Dawn, and I've really enjoyed our time together. I thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you, Max.
Yeah, right. And do follow Maxwell. Maxwell got published in Consumer Reports, guys. Great article in Consumer Reports. Yeah, so check out his post on LinkedIn. And
I hate to talk over you, man, but you know what I did? You know, the only disappointment I have with that Consumer Reports article is I didn't know to tell them to put the BrailleDoodle in it.
No.
Because I think they would have, because the whole point of the thing was low tech stuff. And at one point I mentioned how learning Braille could be a hindrance to using high tech options. This would have been a natural fit in that article.
Well, you got to write another article. Just write another one.
No, I will definitely. I'll definitely forward this part of the podcast to my editor over there and see if we can't do something about that, man.
Okay.
So look, now that I've lost complete control of the show, it's time to come to an end. So, hey, this is the Accessibility Advantage, which you can find on the accessibilityadvantage.com. We are blessed to be supported by blueberry.com. That's Blueberry without the E's. They provide the hosting for the podcast. And so if you have a show or thinking about a show and you need some podcast hosting, they not only offer a very low cost option, but it's simple, it's easy to use, and the output is very accessible. I highly recommend them. They've been supporting me, my podcast, and the podcast of a few other people with disabilities for several years now. So please check them out. If you or your organization needs help with improving accessibility, or you want somebody who can write, speak, or podcast on the subject for your organization, please do reach out. There's a link on the website where you can send me an email. As he said, you can follow me on LinkedIn. I'm Maxwell Ivey over there, Ivey. So really appreciate y'all joining me today. I know y'all have a lot of demands on your time and many options for how to spend what little time you have these days. So thank you. We'll see y'all next time on the Accessibility Advantage. And let me do the last half of my theme song and we'll be done.
Okay.
Disabled people, we tell our friends and share to our social sites. Don't think about how hard it is. Just focus on those dollar signs. 'Cause accessibility ain't just for those with disabilities.
Item choose 1 of 2 items and stream button. End stream. End the stream. Alt set not yet. End stream button. StreamYard.